Imagine a world where the most profound betrayals aren't born from sudden rage, but from meticulous planning, cold ambition, and a heart as calculating as a spreadsheet. A world where the person who swore to love and protect you becomes the architect of your destruction. This isn't just a story about a crime, it's a chilling exploration of trust shattered, the subtle art of deception, and the incredible, almost superhuman resilience it takes to claw your way back from the brink of oblivion. Our story begins in the sterile hush of room 314, a place where life hung by a thread, marked by the relentless, rhythmic beeps of machines. Each sound was a cruel tally, counting down the labored breaths of Amelia Foster. Her once vibrant brown skin, the canvas of a life lived with passion and purpose, was now a ghostly ashen gray. Her beautiful features, sculpted by success and a bright spirit, had become gaunt and hollow, consumed by an unseen enemy. Amelia was not just anyone. She was a titan, a self-made tech entrepreneur who had conjured a $1 million empire from pure grit and innovation. She'd built something from nothing, a testament to her brilliance and drive. Yet here she lay, reduced to a fragile network of tubes and wires, her formidable will pitted against an illness that had erupted from nowhere, systematically dismantling her body in a mere 3 months. And standing at the foot of her bed, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding before him, was Robert Foster, her husband of 8 years. His gaze, however, wasn't fixed on the woman he'd vowed to cherish. No, his eyes darted to his watch, a third time in 10 minutes. His wife was dying, and all he could truly focus on was his dinner reservation with Victoria. Think about that for a moment. The person whose hand you held at the altar, whose dreams you promised to share, is fading away, and your mind is already on the next conquest, the next meal, the next chapter of a life you've meticulously planned without them. It's a chilling insight into the depths of human depravity, where a wedding vow becomes nothing more than a contractual obligation to be bypassed, a stepping stone to personal gain. At precisely 7:30 p.m., Robert moved towards the bed, a performance of sorrow already rehearsed and perfected. He leaned down, a fleeting kiss pressed to Amelia's forehead. "Goodbye, baby," he whispered, just loud enough, carefully calibrated for the ears of the attending nurse. "I love you so much. I'll always love you." Patricia, the nurse, a woman seasoned by 2 decades of witnessing life's most poignant goodbyes, felt a tear prick her eye. She watched, believing she was observing the raw, heartbreaking farewell of a grieving husband. But as the moment stretched, a discordant note resonated within her. Something felt wrong. Patricia had seen genuine grief. She knew its hallmarks: the raw, uncontrolled sobs, the slumped shoulders heavy with despair, the eyes red-rimmed and swollen from a torrent of tears. She recognized the shaky hands, the desperate clinging to a loved one's fading warmth. This was not it. Robert's eyes were dry, unnervingly so for a man supposedly losing his soulmate. His voice, meant to convey devastation, was too steady, too controlled. His body language, rather than rigid with anguish, was subtly relaxed, almost relieved. It was the body language of someone checking off a task, not losing a part of their soul. It's a subtle but powerful reminder that intuition, especially from those on the front lines of human vulnerability, can often be the first alarm bell in a symphony of deceit. As Robert turned and walked towards the door, a flicker of movement caught Patricia's eye. Amelia's fingers, almost imperceptibly, twitched. Patricia rushed to the bedside, a surge of adrenaline urging her to check the monitors, to find any sign of hope or change. But Robert didn't even glance back. He was already in the hallway, his phone emerging from his pocket, his thumbs flying across the screen. "I'll be there in an hour. It's almost over." Patricia watched him through the glass partition, a frown creasing her brow. This wasn't how it usually went. Most husbands couldn't tear themselves away from their dying wives' sides. They clung to every precious second, every fleeting breath. Most husbands weren't making phone calls about dinner plans moments after a supposed final goodbye. And most certainly, most husbands didn't look so palpably relieved when they thought no one was watching. Her instincts screamed. This wasn't grief, it was calculation. This wasn't sorrow, it was satisfaction. Down in the sterile concrete labyrinth of the hospital parking garage, Robert finally allowed the mask to slip. He loosened his tie, a physical shedding of his performative sorrow, and for the first time in weeks, a genuine smile spread across his face. A smile devoid of warmth, fueled purely by avarice. Soon, he mused, very soon, all of Amelia's assets would be his. The massive life insurance payout, the 3 thriving companies she had built, the strategic investments, the sprawling house in Beverly Hills, everything she had meticulously worked so hard to create, to nurture, to expand, would simply transfer ownership to him. And Victoria, his co-conspirator, his twisted partner in crime, had promised him so much more once they were married. He thought back to the small vial of clear liquid Victoria had handed him 6 months prior. Her instructions had been deceptively simple, chilling in their casual delivery, just a few drops in her morning coffee. It's undetectable, and it will look like a rare autoimmune disease. No one will ever suspect anything. The plan, from Robert's perspective, had worked flawlessly. Amelia's symptoms had begun subtly, innocuously enough. A persistent fatigue, occasional nausea, a dull ache in her joints. When she sought medical help, doctors ran test after test, probing and analyzing, but found nothing definitive. The poison Victoria had crafted was a diabolical masterpiece of subtlety, brilliant in its deceptive simplicity. It mimicked the insidious progression of several different diseases, slowly, methodically shutting down the body's major organs without leaving a trace that standard tests could identify. Meanwhile, Victoria Chin herself had played the role of the supportive colleague and concerned friend to perfection. She'd visited Amelia in the hospital, always arriving with a bouquet of flowers, her face a mask of empathy. No one, absolutely no one, suspected that this elegant biochemist, with her refined demeanor and impeccable taste, was systematically murdering her business partner's wife. Her motive? To dismantle everything Amelia had built, to inherit the spoils, to seize control. It wasn't just about the money. It was about power, about conquering, about leaving a trail of destruction while maintaining an untouchable facade. As Robert drove towards the restaurant, his mind awash in fantasies of wealth and freedom, he remained blissfully unaware of the silent shadow that clung to his tail. A black sedan, a discreet sentinel, had been following him for the past week. Behind its wheel sat Isabella Brooks, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had turned bone white. She was almost identical to her twin sister, Amelia, a genetic echo, a mirrored image of shared lineage. But in Isabella's eyes, where Amelia's might have held ambition and warmth, there burned a fierce, unyielding determination, an inferno of purpose that spoke of something far beyond casual observation. Isabella had received the call about Amelia's mysterious illness just 2 days prior. The sisters had been estranged for 5 long years, a bitter business disagreement driving a wedge between them. But blood, as they say, is thicker than water, and in moments of crisis, the ancient bonds of family often reassert their undeniable pull. When Isabella arrived at the hospital that morning, the sterile air had done little to calm her escalating unease. She was utterly shocked by what she found. This wasn't just illness. This was something profoundly, disturbingly wrong. The medical records, usually a bastion of clarity, didn't make sense. The symptoms were too varied, too strange, a constellation of disparate ailments that defied conventional diagnosis. Amelia's blood work screamed of multiple organ failure, but the progression, the insidious timeline of deterioration, was unlike anything Isabella had ever encountered in her professional life. And Isabella wasn't just anyone. She was a forensic accountant, a specialist in insurance fraud cases, someone who lived and breathed patterns, anomalies, and the subtle signs of engineered misfortune. Her expertise wasn't in medicine, but in uncovering deliberate financial malfeasance, disguised as accidents or natural occurrences. Even more troubling than the medical inconsistencies was Robert's behavior. Isabella had never liked her brother-in-law. His superficial charm, his vague evasiveness, his transparent ambition, these traits had always grated on her. But she had never suspected he was capable of anything like this. The way he artfully dodged eye contact whenever the conversation turned to Amelia's condition. The constant, almost compulsive checking of his phone, as if anticipating a crucial update, yet never seeming truly present. The unsettling impression that he was more preoccupied with business matters, with the logistics of Amelia's empire, than with the life of his dying wife. It all coalesced into a chilling mosaic, pointing irrevocably to something sinister, something deliberately engineered. Back in the hospital, another piece of the puzzle was falling into place. Patricia, the observant nurse from room 314, was discussing her escalating concerns with Dr. Susan Martinez, the attending physician. "I'm telling you, something isn't right about that husband," Patricia insisted, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, even in the presumed privacy of the doctor's office. "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen a man act like that when his wife is dying." But it wasn't just a gut feeling. It was a professional intuition, honed by thousands of hours at the intersection of life and death, an instinct that screamed incongruity. Dr. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. She had, in fact, noticed some irregularities in Amelia's case herself. The toxicology reports had come back negative for known poisons, a standard procedure in cases of unexplained organ failure. But as any experienced physician knows, a negative result doesn't always mean an absence of foul play. "There are hundreds of substances," Dr. Martinez mused aloud, her voice tight with concern, "that could cause these symptoms without showing up on standard tests." This thought, a medical truism, now echoed with a new, terrifying resonance. "Has anyone run a more comprehensive tox screen?" she asked, her gaze fixed on Patricia. "Not yet," Patricia replied, her eyes meeting the doctor's. "But I think we should. And there's something else. A woman came by this afternoon claiming to be Mrs. Foster's sister. She looked exactly like her, but she was asking a lot of questions about the medical treatment and timeline of symptoms." Dr. Martinez felt a sudden chill snake down her spine. In her extensive medical experience, when family members, especially those previously uninvolved, started asking such detailed, timeline-specific questions about treatments and symptoms, it usually signified one thing: a deep, unsettling suspicion of foul play. It was the red flag that often preceded a storm. "Get me that extended toxicology panel immediately," she ordered, her voice now sharp with urgency. "And if that sister comes back, I want to talk to her." The convergence of intuition, an astute nurse's observation, and a doctor's growing unease was creating an unexpected force, a quiet yet potent resistance against Robert and Victoria's carefully constructed narrative. Meanwhile, at an upscale Italian restaurant across town, Robert was basking in what he believed was the glow of his imminent freedom. The clinking of wine glasses, the subtle hum of polite conversation, the rich aroma of expensive food, it all contributed to the illusion of a perfect crime nearing its triumphant conclusion. Victoria raised her wine glass in a toast, her perfectly manicured fingers catching the ambient candlelight, reflecting its soft glow. "To new beginnings," she purred, her smile a beautiful, chillingly perfect facade that never quite reached the icy depths of her eyes. Victoria was a woman crafted from ambition and calculation. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was a cold, predatory beauty, like that of a perfectly preserved specimen. Her designer clothes, the glint of expensive jewelry, everything about her spoke of wealth, refinement, and an effortless superiority. But beneath the veneer of elegance, there was an almost primal, predatory glint in her gaze, a hunger that transcended mere materialism. She had been orchestrating this elaborate takeover for over a year, meticulously positioning herself within Amelia's intricate business circle, patiently learning about the company's vulnerabilities, its strengths, and its crucial weak points. And most importantly, she had learned about Robert's profound weaknesses. Robert, in Victoria's cold clinical assessment, was weak, consumed by greed, and tragically easily manipulated. He was the perfect, pliable accomplice for her grand, intricate plan. What he utterly failed to grasp, what his self-serving ambition blinded him to, was that once Amelia was dead and her vast assets seamlessly transferred, Victoria had no intention of sharing. Robert, too, was a liability, an unreliable pawn. There was simply too much money at stake, too much power to consolidate, to share with someone as fundamentally flawed and compromised as Robert. His usefulness had a very distinct expiration date. "How much longer do you think it will take?" Robert asked, his voice betraying a crude impatience as he cut into his perfectly cooked steak, the mundane act of eating contrasting sharply with the monstrous topic of their conversation. "Not long now," Victoria replied, her voice smooth and unhurried. "The doctors said her organs are shutting down. It should be over within the next day or two." They spoke of death as if it were a business merger, a quarterly report, a mere formality. What neither of them knew, what their arrogance prevented them from even suspecting, was that Isabella, Amelia's twin sister, had been sitting 3 tables away, a silent, unseen witness. Her phone, discreetly placed, was recording their entire conversation, capturing every chilling word, every casual pronouncement of Amelia's impending demise. She had followed Robert from the hospital, her instincts screaming a warning, and what she was hearing now confirmed her deepest, most terrifying fears. Her sister wasn't merely succumbing to some mysterious, untreatable illness. She was being methodically, coldly murdered. As Isabella listened to Robert and Victoria discuss Amelia's death with the same detached ease one might plan a vacation, a primal, all-consuming rage began to build in her chest. It was a sensation unlike anything she had ever experienced, a searing, righteous fury that threatened to consume her. Monsters, she thought, absolute monsters, had been slowly killing her sister for months. And now, they were celebrating their heinous success over expensive wine and gourmet pasta, toasting to their villainy. But Isabella, as they were about to discover, was not just any grieving sister. She was a formidable forensic accountant, a woman who had spent years tracking down white-collar criminals, dissecting complex financial conspiracies, and meticulously building cases to bring them to justice. She understood the intricate dance of evidence gathering, the subtle art of constructing an irrefutable case, and most importantly, how to ensure that the guilty parties paid a commensurate price for their crimes. As she watched Robert and Victoria clink glasses, basking in their presumed triumph, Isabella made a silent, unshakable promise to her dying sister. She wouldn't just save Amelia's life. She would ensure these 2 individuals paid for every single moment of suffering, every shred of fear, every ounce of betrayal they had inflicted. The game, Isabella knew, was about to change, and she, Isabella Brooks, was playing to win. The night after that horrifying restaurant encounter, Isabella didn't sleep. She spent the entire night immersed in a frantic, all-consuming deep dive, researching everything and anything she could unearth about Robert and Victoria. The digital world, her chosen battlefield, yielded a harvest of information that made her blood run cold, chilling her to the very marrow. Victoria Chin, she discovered, wasn't merely some colleague who had developed illicit feelings for Robert. Victoria Chin was a predator, a seasoned hunter who had perfected her deadly craft. She had done this before. Leveraging her formidable forensic accounting skills and her privileged access to an array of financial databases, tools she usually deployed to dismantle complex corporate fraud, Isabella meticulously traced Victoria's history back a staggering 15 years. What she uncovered was a chilling pattern, a macabre blueprint of repeated villainy. 3 previous relationships, each culminating in a mysterious death strikingly similar to Amelia's deteriorating condition. And in each instance, a substantial inheritance had somehow, by convoluted legal pathways, ended up flowing into Victoria's family's pharmaceutical company. The pattern was undeniable, stark in its clarity, once you knew what insidious signs to look for. Victoria's father, Dr. William Chin, owned Chin Biotech, a seemingly innocuous small pharmaceutical company. But Isabella's research revealed its sinister specialization, developing untraceable compounds for research purposes. Isabella's stomach churned as she connected the chilling dots. This wasn't a crime of passion, born of fleeting emotion or desperate lust. It wasn't even merely about greed, though greed was a potent fuel. This was a business model, meticulously refined, a calculated enterprise of murder for profit, disguised behind the veneer of medical science and corporate ambition. This wasn't an anomaly. It was a systemic operation. At 6:00 in the morning, as the first gray light of dawn barely pierced the hospital windows, Isabella was back, a woman transformed by purpose, armed with a thick folder crammed with printouts of everything she had discovered. She found Dr. Martinez just as the physician was starting her shift, a fleeting moment before the relentless demands of the hospital day began. Isabella pulled her aside, her voice low but infused with an almost electrifying urgency. "Doctor," she began, her gaze unwavering, "I need to speak with you about my sister, Amelia Foster. I believe she's being poisoned." Dr. Martinez, accustomed to the raw emotions that often accompanied serious illness, studied Isabella's face carefully. The resemblance to Amelia was indeed uncanny, a genetic mirror. But there was an intensity in Isabella's eyes, a burning conviction that Amelia, with all her quiet strength, had never quite possessed. This woman, Dr. Martinez realized, was on a mission, fueled by something far beyond mere concern. "That's a very serious accusation," Dr. Martinez stated, her professional skepticism a necessary barrier. "What makes you think—" "Because I have evidence," Isabella interjected, cutting straight to the chase. She handed over the thick folder. "Victoria Chin, who works with my sister, has been involved in 3 previous relationships where her partner died under mysterious circumstances very similar to Amelia's condition. Each time, she inherited substantial assets." Dr. Martinez began to flip through the documents, her initial skepticism giving way to a deepening dread. Financial records, official death certificates, insurance payouts. It was all meticulously laid out, a chilling paper trail of repeated, unexplained tragedies. Her expression grew more troubled with each passing page. "How did you gather all this information so quickly?" she asked, her voice tinged with a reluctant admiration. "I'm a forensic accountant," Isabella replied, a hint of steel in her tone. "This is what I do for a living. And doctor, there's more." Isabella then played the recording she had made at the restaurant, the casual, chilling conversation between Robert and Victoria about Amelia's impending death, their plans to divide her assets. Dr. Martinez listened in mounting horror as the casual callousness of their words filled the room, a grotesque soundtrack to a murder conspiracy. "We need to call the police immediately," Dr. Martinez declared, her face pale. "Not yet," Isabella countered, her strategic mind already several steps ahead. "We need more evidence, and more importantly, we need to save my sister first. Can you run tests for exotic poisons? Things that wouldn't show up on a standard toxicology screen?" Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. "I already ordered an extended panel yesterday because something felt wrong about this case," she confessed, her intuition having served her well. "The results should be back this afternoon." The convergence of medical intuition and forensic expertise had finally created an unstoppable force. While they waited for the critical test results, Isabella knew she couldn't remain idle. She decided to search Amelia's house for more direct evidence. Using the spare key her sister had given her years ago, a relic of a time before their estrangement, she let herself into the sprawling Beverly Hills mansion. It was a house that felt less like a home and more like a museum dedicated to Amelia's phenomenal success. Awards gleamed from meticulously arranged shelves. Photographs captured Amelia at various tech conferences and glittering charity events. And expensive art adorned every wall, each piece a testament to her achievements. But Isabella wasn't there to admire her sister's empire. She was there to find proof of attempted murder, to uncover the hidden rot beneath the polished facade. In the master bedroom, a space Robert and Amelia had once shared, Isabella's sharp eyes found what she was looking for. Hidden behind Robert's array of cologne bottles in the bathroom cabinet was a small vial of clear liquid, almost entirely empty. Her heart pounded as she carefully photographed it from every conceivable angle, documenting its existence, its placement, its chilling implications. Then, with practiced precision, she placed it in an evidence bag she had thoughtfully brought from her car. In Amelia's home office, the nerve center of her vast business operations, Isabella unearthed even more disturbing evidence of Robert's insidious betrayal. He had been meticulously forging Amelia's signature on a cascade of legal documents for months, changes to life insurance beneficiaries, transfers of power of attorney, modifications to crucial business partnerships. Every single document was designed with one singular, nefarious purpose: to ensure that Robert would seamlessly inherit everything the moment Amelia died. But the most chilling discovery was a simple manila folder, tucked away in a hidden compartment within Robert's desk drawer, starkly labeled Timeline. Inside, Isabella found meticulously detailed notes about Amelia's declining health, each entry chillingly matched against a schedule of treatments that corresponded exactly with the dates when her symptoms had demonstrably worsened. The handwriting wasn't Robert's. It was unmistakably feminine, precise, almost clinical in its neatness. Victoria, Isabella realized with a jolt of horror, had been documenting the murder like a scientific experiment, tracking the efficacy of her poison with detached academic interest. Isabella photographed everything, leaving no detail uncaptured, before carefully replacing the items exactly as she had found them. She couldn't afford to let Robert suspect that anyone knew the truth, not yet. Not until she had amassed enough irrefutable evidence to ensure that neither he nor Victoria could possibly escape the cold grasp of justice. Her phone buzzed, a sudden vibration slicing through the heavy silence of the mansion. It was a text from Dr. Martinez. "Lab results are in. Meet me in my office immediately." The moment of truth was at hand. At the hospital, Dr. Martinez's face was grim as she handed Isabella the toxicology report. "Your sister has been poisoned with something called compound X47, she stated, her voice tight with a mixture of shock and professional awe. "It's an experimental neurotoxin that attacks the nervous system and major organs simultaneously. The scary thing is, this compound doesn't exist in any medical database. Someone created it specifically for this purpose." Isabella felt her world tilt, the floor beneath her feet threatening to give way. This wasn't just a random act of murder. It was a highly specialized, custom-engineered weapon designed for one specific target. "How long does she have?" Isabella asked, her voice barely a whisper, the desperation a raw edge. "With conventional treatment?" "Maybe days," Dr. Martinez admitted, the harsh reality heavy in the air. "But now that we know what we're dealing with, we might be able to develop a counteracting treatment. I have a colleague at UCLA who specializes in exotic poisoning cases. If anyone can save your sister, it's him." Hope, a fragile, desperate thing, flickered in Isabella's chest. As Dr. Martinez immediately began making urgent phone calls to arrange Amelia's discreet transfer to UCLA Medical Center, Isabella sat beside her sister's hospital bed holding her hand, whispering fierce promises of justice into the quiet room. "I'm going to get them, Amelia. Both of them. They picked the wrong family to mess with." And then, a faint, almost imperceptible response. Amelia's fingers, weakly but distinctly, squeezed Isabella's hand. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Isabella felt a surge of hope. Her sister was still fighting. She was still in there somewhere, clinging to life. And Isabella, fueled by a love fierce and unyielding, vowed to move heaven and earth to ensure Amelia survived, to see Robert and Victoria pay for every heinous act they had committed. But first, she had to maintain the elaborate charade. She had to ensure they didn't suspect their meticulously crafted plan was unraveling, that their perfect crime was spiraling out of their control. Isabella's mind, always a whirlwind of strategic thinking, conceived of an idea, a dangerous gamble that would require her to do something she had never done before: pretend to be her dying sister. As evening approached, casting long shadows across the hospital corridors, Isabella began preparing for the performance of her lifetime. She was going to let Robert and Victoria believe their insidious plan was working, that Amelia was fading, all while secretly gathering the irrefutable evidence needed to utterly destroy them. The hunt for justice, she knew, was just beginning. Isabella immersed herself in the role, spending 2 intense hours meticulously studying surveillance footage of Amelia from the hospital's security cameras. She scrutinized every gesture, every subtle facial expression, every unique mannerism. As identical twins, they had always possessed an uncanny ability to fool people when they were children, playfully swapping places for harmless pranks. But this deception would be infinitely more challenging, its stakes immeasurably higher, and its importance quite literally a matter of life and death. Using artful makeup and careful positioning, Isabella painstakingly recreated the pale, sickly appearance that months of slow poisoning had cruelly bestowed upon Amelia. She practiced speaking in a weak, raspy voice, forcing her usually strong tones into a fragile whisper. She moved with the careful, deliberate slowness of someone recovering from a devastating, debilitating illness. Dr. Martinez, a key ally in this dangerous deception, had arranged for Amelia to be quietly transferred to UCLA Medical Center under maximum security, a covert operation known only to a handful of the most trusted medical staff. In Amelia's place, Isabella would pose as a recovering Amelia, a living decoy. This crucial charade would buy the specialized medical team at UCLA invaluable time to develop a counteracting treatment, while simultaneously allowing Isabella to gather the remaining evidence needed to convict Robert and Victoria. The plan was fraught with danger, undeniably complicated, but Isabella knew with absolute certainty that it was their only chance. If Robert or Victoria suspected, even for a moment, that Amelia was recovering or that anyone knew about the poisoning, they would vanish before justice could ever be served. At 8:00 p.m., Isabella lay in Amelia's hospital bed, a silent, tense figure, when Robert arrived for his customary evening visit. She kept her eyes carefully closed, her breathing slow and steady, a practiced mimicry of profound weakness as he approached. "Hey, baby," Robert said softly, the words dripping with a fake tenderness. Yet despite the theatricality, Isabella, with her heightened senses, could detect the underlying impatience in his voice, the barely concealed eagerness for this final act to conclude. "How are you feeling tonight?" Isabella slowly opened her eyes, blinking as if the dim hospital light caused her pain. "Robert, is that you?" she whispered, her voice a fragile imitation of Amelia's. "Yeah, it's me," he replied, a rehearsed gentleness in his tone. "The doctors say you're doing a little better today." Isabella almost laughed, a bitter, silent ripple of irony. The doctors had said no such thing. In fact, they had deliberately told Robert that Amelia was deteriorating rapidly, a crucial piece of misinformation for their trap. But the truth, the true irony, was that now, no longer being systematically poisoned, Amelia's body was beginning to fight back, slowly reclaiming its strength at UCLA. "I feel so weak," Isabella whispered, her gaze carefully scrutinizing Robert's face. She caught it, a fleeting flicker of disappointment in his eyes when she spoke. He had been expecting to find a corpse, a final, unmoving tableau of victory, not a wife who was, by her own whispered account, starting to recover. This slight deviation from his carefully constructed timeline was clearly unsettling him. "Don't worry about anything, sweetheart," Robert said, masking his irritation with a practiced smile. "I'm taking care of all the business stuff while you focus on getting better." His words were meant to be reassuring, but Isabella heard the thinly veiled attempt to keep her out of the loop, to maintain control. Isabella's blood simmered, but she forced herself to remain calm, her internal fury masked by a convincing display of fragile confusion. "What business stuff?" she asked, her voice a little stronger than before, pushing subtly. "Just some paperwork, insurance forms, legal documents," he dismissed casually, waving a hand. "Nothing for you to worry about." "I want to see them," Isabella insisted, allowing a note of weak insistence to creep into her voice. "I should sign my own papers." Robert's jaw tightened, an almost imperceptible clench that Isabella's keen eyes immediately registered. "The doctor said you shouldn't strain yourself with business matters right now. I have power of attorney, remember? Everything is taken care of. He said it with a chilling finality, a statement of absolute control. Isabella nodded slowly, filing away this crucial piece of information. Robert wasn't just trying to murder her sister, he was actively committing multiple felonies, forgery, fraud, theft, all beyond the attempted murder itself. It layered his depravity. Is Victoria still helping with the company? Isabella asked, her voice feigning an innocent curiosity, a casual question from a sick woman. At the mere mention of Victoria's name, Robert's entire demeanor underwent a revolting transformation. His voice became noticeably warmer, his posture relaxed, almost jovial. It was a disgusting display, a stark revelation of his true affections. Yes, she's been incredible, he gushed, working long hours, keeping everything running smoothly. She's been so worried about you. She's such a good friend, Isabella said, fighting to keep the heavy sarcasm from tainting her weak tone. Maybe she could visit me tomorrow. I'd like to thank her for everything she's done. Robert hesitated just for a moment, but it was a moment too long, a tiny crack in his facade. I'm not sure if she'll have time. She's been so busy with the merger negotiations. Merger negotiations? Isabella echoed, making her voice sound genuinely confused and concerned. What merger? We never discussed any merger. Don't worry about it, baby. Robert quickly backpedaled, his tone suddenly dismissive. It's just a small partnership deal with Chin Biotech. Victoria thinks it could be really profitable for the company. Isabella felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with alarming speed. Victoria wasn't just stealing Amelia's husband and assets. She was strategically positioning herself to seize control of Amelia's entire business empire, systematically merging it with her family's pharmaceutical company, effectively absorbing it into her criminal enterprise. The scale of their ambition was breathtaking. After Robert finally left, promising to return the next morning, Isabella didn't waste a second. She immediately called Agent Sarah Thompson from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. Isabella had worked with Agent Thompson on several complex fraud cases over the years and trusted her implicitly. Isabella, what's this about? You sounded urgent on the phone. Sarah, I need your help with something big, Isabella declared, her voice now sharp and clear, devoid of any feigned weakness. My sister is being murdered, and I need FBI resources to build a case that will stick. Over the next hour, Isabella laid out everything she had meticulously discovered, the chilling pattern of Victoria's previous victims, the irrefutable evidence of forged documents, the insidious poison, the planned business merger, every single piece of the dark puzzle. Agent Thompson listened intently, her expression shifting from professional assessment to growing alarm, taking copious notes and asking pointed, incisive questions. This is definitely federal jurisdiction, Agent Thompson confirmed, her voice grave. Given the interstate financial crimes and the use of an exotic poison, but I need more concrete evidence before I can get warrants. I'm working on that, Isabella affirmed. I'm going to keep posing as my sister while she recovers at UCLA. But Sarah, I need immediate surveillance on both Robert and Victoria. If they realize their plan is falling apart, they'll run. Consider it done, Agent Thompson promised, her voice firm. I'll have teams on both of them within the hour. But Isabella, this is incredibly dangerous. If they figure out what you're doing, they won't hesitate to silence you. They won't, Isabella countered, a fierce resolve burning in her eyes. I'm not the same scared little girl who used to hide behind her sister. I'm going to take these monsters down. She had transformed from a protective sister into a formidable hunter. The very next morning, Isabella was ready, her resolve sharpened, when Victoria arrived for her orchestrated sympathy visit. Victoria entered the hospital room carrying a bouquet of flowers, her face a perfectly crafted tableau of concern and sadness, a performance as flawless as her designer outfit. "Oh, Amelia, sweetheart, how are you feeling today?" Victoria's voice was honey-sweet, laced with a practiced tenderness. But Isabella, with her forensic eye, could see the cold calculation flickering behind Victoria's eyes as she quickly assessed Isabella's condition, searching for signs of decline. "Better, I think," Isabella replied weakly, maintaining the facade. "The doctors say I might be turning a corner." Isabella watched Victoria's face meticulously, catching the fleeting flash of irritation that crossed her features before it was expertly hidden behind a saccharine smile. The news of recovery was clearly unwelcome. "That's wonderful news," Victoria gushed, though her smile was now visibly strained. "We've all been so worried about you." She attempted to pivot the conversation. "Robert mentioned something about a merger with your father's company," Isabella said, her voice still weak and confused, testing the waters. "I don't remember discussing that." Victoria's composure, usually ironclad, began to show cracks. Her smile became even more strained, almost brittle. "Oh, that's just a small partnership Robert and I have been exploring. Nothing major. You shouldn't worry about business right now. Just focus on getting better." The dismissive tone was clear. "But it's my company," Isabella insisted, allowing a note of distress and dawning realization to creep into her voice. "I should be involved in any major decisions." Of course," Victoria quickly interjected, her voice placating but with an underlying tension. "We would never do anything without your approval. Robert just wanted to get some preliminary information while you recover." Isabella could see that Victoria was becoming increasingly uncomfortable, even agitated, by the conversation. The poisoner had expected to be planning a funeral by now, not explaining business deals to a recovering victim. The script had deviated, and Victoria was improvising poorly. "I'd like to review all the paperwork when I'm feeling stronger," Isabella said firmly, the feigned weakness giving way to an unexpected resolve. Victoria's mask slipped for a fleeting, terrifying moment, revealing something cold, dangerous, and utterly ruthless underneath. "I'm sure that can be arranged," she said through gritted teeth, her voice barely concealing the venom. After Victoria finally left, Isabella felt a profound chill, one that had nothing to do with the hospital's air conditioning. She had seen the real Victoria Chin for just a moment, a glimpse into the icy heart of a predator, and it was terrifying. This woman was not just calculating. She was a remorseless killer, a serial murderer. And Isabella had just painted a target on her own back by showing signs of recovery and daring to ask inconvenient questions about the business. But Isabella wasn't afraid. She was incandescently, unyieldingly angry. And anger, she knew, was a far more powerful motivator than fear. These people had tried to murder her sister, to steal her life's work, to dismantle everything she had painstakingly built. They had picked the wrong family to target. The game, Isabella affirmed to herself, was far from over. In fact, she was just getting started. Isabella's relentless investigation into Victoria's background unearthed a conspiracy far more elaborate and terrifying than she had initially imagined. Working late into the night from her hotel room, fueled by coffee and a burning desire for justice, she meticulously traced financial records, corporate filings, and insurance claims. Piece by agonizing piece, she began to assemble a picture of a family business built not on innovation or profit, but on systematically orchestrated murder. Chin Biotech, it turned out, wasn't merely a small pharmaceutical company. It was the sophisticated front for a sprawling criminal operation that had been systematically targeting successful entrepreneurs for over 2 decades. Victoria's father, Dr. William Chin, the patriarch of this macabre empire, had cultivated a shadowy network of contacts within hospitals, insurance companies, and even legal firms. These seemingly legitimate professionals, unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, helped facilitate what appeared to be natural deaths or tragic accidents, but were, in chilling reality, carefully orchestrated murders. The pattern, Isabella discovered, was always disturbingly consistent. Victoria would first infiltrate the social or professional circles of a wealthy target, typically someone with a highly successful business and substantial, liquid assets. She would charm her way in, befriending the target's spouse, lover, or even a close business partner, slowly building a facade of trust while discreetly gathering crucial intelligence about their financial situation, their personal vulnerabilities, and their overall lifestyle. Once Victoria had identified the perfect accomplice, someone weak-willed, consumed by greed, or desperate for a way out of their own perceived financial struggles, much like Robert, She would expertly seduce them, drawing them into her elaborate murder scheme. The victim would then be slowly poisoned with one of Dr. Chin's custom-engineered, untraceable compounds, while the accomplice, guided by Victoria, simultaneously forged documents to surreptitiously redirect assets. After the victim's inevitable death, Victoria would help the accomplice claim the inheritance, only to then orchestrate their accidental death within 6 months to a year, ensuring all assets ultimately flowed back to shell companies controlled by Chin Biotech. It was a perfectly executed, self-perpetuating cycle of wealth accumulation through murder. Isabella uncovered records detailing at least 12 victims over the past 15 years, with a combined stolen wealth exceeding $1 million. The Chin family had been quite literally getting away with murder, building a formidable pharmaceutical empire stained with blood money, their crimes hidden in plain sight. But Victoria, in her calculated arrogance, had made one critical, fatal error with Amelia. She had chosen a target whose identical twin sister happened to be a forensic accountant, a woman possessing the very specific skills and relentless determination required to unravel such a complex web of deceit. Isabella intended to make sure this mistake would be Victoria's last. At 9:00 a.m., Agent Thompson called, her voice tight with disturbing news from the surveillance teams. "Isabella, we have a problem. Victoria met with 3 men last night at a warehouse in Long Beach. We couldn't get close enough to hear the entire conversation, but our lip readers caught fragments. They were discussing eliminating complications and cleaning up loose ends." Isabella felt a rush of ice in her veins. "They know," she breathed. "They know something's wrong." "It gets worse," Agent Thompson continued. "One of the men was carrying what looked like medical equipment. We think they're planning to finish what they started, possibly by infiltrating the hospital." "They can't get to my sister at UCLA," Isabella quickly countered, her mind racing. "Only 5 people know she's there and they're all under federal protection, but they might try to get to me here." "We're moving you to a safe house immediately," Agent Thompson stated, her voice firm. "I'm sending a team to pick you up in 20 minutes. Isabella looked around the hospital room, the sterile, impersonal space that had been her stage for the past 2 days. She wasn't ready to abandon her performance yet. There was still too much evidence to gather, too many pieces of the puzzle remaining. "Sarah, give me 1 more day," Isabella pleaded, a desperate urgency in her voice. "I think I can get them to confess everything on tape, but I need you to trust me." "Absolutely not." Agent Thompson's voice was unyielding. "These people are too dangerous. They are ruthless, Isabella. They are serial killers." "They're dangerous," Isabella retorted, her conviction burning, "because they think they're smarter than everyone else. But they've never faced someone like me before. I can end this, Sarah. I can get justice for my sister and all their other victims." After 20 intense minutes of heated argument, Agent Thompson, reluctantly but understanding the magnitude of Isabella's potential breakthrough, agreed to give her 24 more hours. But it came with stringent conditions. A full FBI surveillance team would be covertly deployed throughout the hospital, and an extraction plan would be ready at a moment's notice. It was a gamble, but one they both knew could yield monumental results. Isabella spent the morning meticulously preparing for what she hoped would be the final, decisive act of her elaborate deception. She worked with Dr. Martinez to discreetly spread word among the hospital staff that Amelia was showing remarkable improvement and might even be ready to return home within the week. This fabricated good news was a crucial part of the trap, designed to lure her unsuspecting prey. At 2:00 p.m., Robert arrived for his daily visit, and Isabella could immediately sense a profound shift in his demeanor. He was agitated, nervous, constantly checking his phone, a stark contrast to his usual feigned composure. Victoria was with him, which was unusual, as she typically visited alone. The presence of both, Isabella knew, was a significant, ominous sign. "How are you feeling today, sweetheart?" Robert asked, but his attention was clearly fragmented, his eyes darting around the room, restless. "Much better," Isabella replied, sitting up in bed with an ease she hadn't dared to display before. "The doctors think I might be able to go home soon. Isn't that wonderful?" Robert and Victoria exchanged a quick, loaded glance that Isabella pretended not to notice. Her words, a deliberate manipulation of their expectations, had clearly thrown them. "That's great news," Victoria said, though her smile looked like it was carved from ice, brittle and cold. "But you shouldn't rush your recovery. These things take time." The thinly veiled concern was a desperate attempt to regain control of the narrative. "I feel strong enough to start thinking about business again," Isabella continued, watching their reactions with hawk-like intensity. "I'd like to review all the documents you've been handling for me, Robert. And Victoria, I want to fully understand this merger you've been discussing." Victoria's composure finally cracked, visibly, irrevocably. "Amelia, you've been very sick," she said, her voice strained, a hint of desperation creeping in. "Maybe you shouldn't be making major business decisions right now." "It's my business," Isabella said firmly, letting a dangerous, steely edge creep into her voice, the facade of weakness finally shedding. "And I want to know exactly what you two have been doing with it while I've been ill." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Robert and Victoria were both staring at Isabella with expressions she couldn't quite read, a complex mixture of surprise, dawning suspicion, and something else entirely, something cold, calculating, and profoundly dangerous. "Of course," Robert said finally, his voice unnaturally calm, almost menacing. "I'll bring all the paperwork tomorrow. You can review everything." After they left, Isabella felt her heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and genuine fear. She had pushed too hard, revealed too much. They knew. She could see it in their eyes, the cold, calculating glint of individuals planning their next, most desperate move. Agent Thompson called within minutes of their departure. "Isabella, our surveillance team says Victoria made 3 phone calls immediately after leaving the hospital. We couldn't intercept them, but we tracked the numbers. All 3 were to men with criminal records involving assault and intimidation." "They're going to try to kill me tonight," Isabella stated with chilling certainty. "We're extracting you now," Agent Thompson declared, her voice brooking no argument. "This operation is over." "No, wait," Isabella pleaded, her mind already several steps ahead. "This might be our chance to catch them in the act of attempted murder. How much more evidence do you need?" "Isabella, you're talking about using yourself as bait for people who have killed at least 12 times," Agent Thompson countered, her voice laced with desperate concern. "I won't allow it." But Isabella had already made up her mind. These monsters had tried to murder her sister, stolen her life's work, and terrorized countless other victims. She wasn't going to let them escape justice because the FBI was being cautious. "Sarah, trust me," Isabella insisted, her voice resonating with an unshakable conviction. "I have a plan." As night fell over the hospital, casting long, eerie shadows, Isabella prepared for what could very well be her final performance. But this time, she wouldn't be playing the role of a recovering, vulnerable victim. Tonight, she would be playing the role of a predator hunting predators, turning their own arrogance against them. Isabella had spent years studying criminal psychology in her forensic accounting work, understanding the intricate mental architecture of financial criminals. She knew, with chilling certainty, that Victoria's type of predator had one fatal flaw: hubris. Victoria believed she was smarter, more sophisticated, more untouchable than anyone around her. Her careful planning, her father's extensive corrupt connections, her seemingly perfect methods, all fueled her absolute conviction of impunity. Isabella intended to use that very arrogance against her, to twist it into the instrument of her downfall. Working in clandestine coordination with Agent Thompson, Isabella developed a daring plan that would give Victoria and Robert exactly what they wanted, or at least what they thought they wanted, while secretly documenting every incriminating word and action. They would stage Isabella's relapse that evening, making it appear that the insidious poison was finally, irrevocably winning. This would be the bait, drawing Victoria and Robert back to the hospital, compelling them to finish what they started. But this time, every single word uttered, every calculated move made, would be recorded, and a dozen highly trained FBI agents would be waiting, hidden in plain sight, ready to spring the trap. At 6:12 p.m., Dr. Martinez began subtly spreading the word among the hospital staff that Amelia Foster had taken a sudden, dramatic turn for the worse. Nurses were carefully instructed to act concerned, even distressed, when Robert inevitably called for an update. The security cameras in room 314, usually passive observers, were precisely adjusted, their hidden lenses and microphones calibrated to capture perfect audio and video of everything that would transpire that night. Isabella lay in the darkened hospital room, a network of monitoring equipment connected to her, designed to falsely indicate failing vital signs. She had meticulously practiced shallow, erratic breathing and applied medical-grade makeup to recreate the deathly pallor that had marked the worst days of Amelia's poisoning. Every detail was crafted to sell the illusion. At 8:30 p.m., her phone buzzed softly with a text from Robert. "Just heard about your condition. Coming to see you now." Isabella smiled grimly in the darkness. The trap was set. The predators were coming. Robert arrived first, entering the room with what appeared to be genuine concern, a performance he effortlessly slipped back into. That facade, however, immediately evaporated the moment he saw there were no nurses present, no vigilant eyes to witness his charade. His expression instantly shifted to one of cold, calculating satisfaction as he approached the bed. "Amelia, can you hear me?" Isabella opened her eyes weakly, blinking against the dim light, feigning confusion. "Robert, I feel so sick again. What's happening to me?" "I don't know, baby," he murmured, playing the devoted husband for the hidden cameras. "But I'm here now." Isabella could see him checking the monitors, noting her supposedly failing vital signs with a grotesque satisfaction rather than any genuine concern. His eyes gleamed with anticipated triumph. After 10 long minutes of performing the role of the distraught husband for the benefit of the unseen cameras, Robert stepped into the hallway, pulling out his phone. "It's working," Isabella heard him whisper, his voice barely audible, yet perfectly captured by the hidden microphones. "She's fading fast. Maybe tonight." 20 minutes later, Victoria arrived, carrying a small, innocuous medical bag. Isabella's blood chilled as she instantly recognized the type of bag, precisely the kind used to transport pharmaceutical samples, or, in this case, a murder weapon. "How is she?" Victoria asked Robert in the hallway, oblivious to the fact that the room's sensitive microphones were capturing their entire conversation. "Worse than this afternoon," Robert reported, a note of triumph in his voice. "I think the stress of talking about business triggered another episode." "Good," Victoria replied, a chilling satisfaction in her tone. "That means the backup doses I gave you last week are working." Isabella felt a wave of nausea wash over her. Robert had been continuing to poison her, her sister, even after she had started showing signs of recovery. Victoria had given him additional doses of the lethal toxin, a contingency plan to ensure Amelia's death if the original timeline didn't work as precisely as intended. Their depravity knew no bounds. Victoria entered the room alone, quietly closing the door behind her, sealing them within the confines of the carefully orchestrated trap. She approached the bed, her hand subtly reaching into her jacket pocket, her fingers closing around the cold, hard barrel of a syringe. "Hello, Amelia," Victoria said softly, her voice now completely devoid of the fake warmth it had held during her previous visits. "I hear you're having another bad night." Isabella opened her eyes, making them appear unfocused and profoundly confused, playing her part to the bitter end. "Victoria, why are you here so late?" "I wanted to make sure you were comfortable," Victoria replied, her voice sickeningly sweet, as she pulled the syringe from her pocket, the needle glinting ominously in the dim light. "I brought something that will help with the pain." Isabella felt every muscle in her body tense, coiled like a spring. This was it. This was the moment. Victoria was about to attempt murder on camera, providing the irrefutable, undeniable evidence the FBI would need for a rock-solid conviction. "What is that?" Isabella asked weakly, feigning terror. "Just something to help you sleep," Victoria purred, reaching for Isabella's forearm, her fingers extending towards the intravenous line. But Isabella had spent too many intense hours studying Victoria's methods, analyzing her cold, calculated precision, to let her get that close. As Victoria's hand moved towards the IV line, Isabella's own hand shot out, grabbing Victoria's wrist with surprising, unyielding strength. The game was up. "I know what you've been doing," Isabella said, her voice suddenly clear, strong, and brimming with unadulterated fury. Victoria's eyes widened in genuine shock, her carefully constructed composure momentarily shattering. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, attempting to pull away. But Isabella's grip was like iron, unyielding. "I know about the poison," Isabella continued, her voice rising. "I know about the forged documents. I know about your father's company and all the other people you've murdered." Victoria struggled, her elegant facade crumbling under the weight of exposure. "You're delirious from the illness," she spat. "You don't know what you're saying." "I'm not Amelia," Isabella declared, sitting up fully in the bed, her eyes blazing with righteous indignation. "I'm her twin sister, Isabella, and you just tried to murder me on camera." The color drained from Victoria's face as the full, horrifying implications of Isabella's words finally hit her. The trap had sprung. At that precise moment, the room's lights suddenly blazed on, momentarily blinding Victoria. Agent Thompson stepped through the door, her weapon drawn, her face stern, followed by 6 other FBI agents, their presence a silent, overwhelming force of justice. "Victoria Chin, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and federal financial crimes," Agent Thompson announced, her voice resonating with authority. Victoria dropped the syringe, her composure utterly, completely shattered. "This is impossible," she whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. She was dying. The poison was working. "The real Amelia is recovering at UCLA Medical Center under federal protection," Isabella stated, standing up from the bed, her presence now radiating strength and triumph. "Every word you just said was recorded, and we have evidence of at least 12 other murders you and your father committed." Robert burst through the door at that exact moment, drawn by the commotion, stopping short when he saw the formidable array of FBI agents. "What's going on, Amelia?" he stammered, confusion and dawning fear warring on his face. "What are these people doing here?" "Hello, Robert," Isabella said coldly, her gaze piercing him. "I'm not Amelia. I'm Isabella Brooks, and you're under arrest for attempting to murder my sister." Robert's face contorted through a series of expressions, bewilderment, dawning realization, and finally, abject terror as he comprehended that his entire, carefully constructed plan had collapsed into utter ruin. "I want a lawyer," Victoria said immediately, her voice regaining a fraction of its former icy control. "Smart choice," Agent Thompson replied, beginning to read them their rights, her voice calm but firm. "You're going to need a very good one." As the FBI agents led Victoria and Robert away in handcuffs, Isabella felt a complex mixture of triumph and profound exhaustion. The last 3 days had been the most intense, the most dangerous, the most emotionally draining of her entire life, but it had been worth every terrifying second. Justice was finally coming for the monsters who had tried to destroy her sister, her family, and so many others. Agent Thompson approached Isabella as the last of the suspects were loaded into FBI vehicles. "That was incredibly brave," she said, her voice a mix of admiration and professional admonishment, "and incredibly stupid. But it worked. We have enough evidence to convict them both on multiple counts of murder and conspiracy." Isabella smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile, the first she had allowed herself in days. "How soon can I see my sister?" "We can leave for UCLA right now," Agent Thompson replied, a small, approving smile playing on her lips. "I think she's going to be very proud of what you've accomplished." As they drove through the Los Angeles night towards the medical center where Amelia was recovering, Isabella reflected on how profoundly her world had shifted in just 3 days. She had thought she was too late to save her sister, consumed by the gnawing fear of impending loss. But it turned out, in a twist of fate, she was just in time. Not only had she saved Amelia's life, but through her actions, she had also prevented Victoria's future victims from falling prey to her insidious machinations. The nightmare, at least for them, was finally over. But Isabella knew the real work, the long, arduous process of healing and rebuilding, was just beginning. There would be trials, testimony, and the immense complex task of helping Amelia reconstruct her shattered life and business. Yet for the first time since this harrowing ordeal began, Isabella felt a powerful, undeniable sense of hope for the future. Victoria Chin and Robert Foster had made one critical, unforgivable error in their perfectly engineered murder plan. They had catastrophically underestimated the raw, unwavering power of a sister's love and the fierce, relentless determination of a forensic accountant committed to uncovering the truth. It was a mistake that would, unequivocally, cost them their freedom for the rest of their lives. The arrest of Victoria Chin and Robert Foster sent shockwaves, a seismic tremor through both the elite medical and cutthroat business communities. But it was only the initial tremor, the first crack in a much larger edifice of crime that would soon become one of the largest and most intricate criminal conspiracies uncovered in recent history. Within mere hours of Victoria's dramatic arrest, FBI agents launched coordinated raids on Chin Biotech laboratories across 3 different states. They seized computers overflowing with incriminating data, financial records meticulously detailing illicit transactions, and samples of exotic custom-engineered compounds, the very poisons that had been used to murder at least 15 victims over 2 decades. Dr. William Chin, the architect of this monstrous enterprise, was apprehended at his sprawling Malibu mansion, caught in the act of desperately attempting to destroy evidence in his personal safe. The Chin empire, built on a foundation of blood and deceit, was finally crumbling. Isabella sat in the stark waiting room of UCLA Medical Center, the sterile quiet, a stark contrast to the adrenaline-fueled chaos of the past 3 days. Finally, after the most intense period of deception in her life, she was about to see her sister. When Dr. Sarah Kim, Amelia's new attending physician, emerged from the treatment room, her face was beaming, radiating a profound relief. "Your sister is responding remarkably well to the treatment," Dr. Kim reported, her voice bright with optimism. "We've been able to neutralize most of the toxin in her system, and her organ function is improving rapidly. She's awake and asking for you." Isabella's hands trembled, a physical manifestation of the emotional journey she had just traversed as she entered Amelia's room. Her sister looked pale and weak, undeniably fragile, but her eyes, those beautiful, intelligent eyes, were clear and alert, truly present for the first time in months. "Isabella." Amelia's voice was barely a whisper, a ghost of its former strength, but it was stronger than it had been in weeks, infused with recognition and profound relief. "I'm here," Isabella said, her voice thick with unshed tears as she gently took her sister's hand, a connection forged anew in the crucible of tragedy. "You're going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay." "The nurses told me what you did," Amelia whispered, her eyes brimming. "You saved my life." Isabella felt tears streaming freely down her face, tears of relief, of sorrow for lost time, of immense love. "I almost lost you," she choked out, her voice raw with emotion. "I'm so sorry we lost touch for so many years. I should have been there to protect you from the beginning." "How could you have known?" Amelia squeezed her sister's hand weakly, a gesture of comfort. "How could anyone have known?" "Tell me everything," Amelia pleaded, a new resolve in her voice. "I need to understand what happened to me." Over the next hour, Isabella recounted the entire horrifying conspiracy, how Victoria had systematically poisoned Amelia for months, while Robert meticulously forged documents to steal her assets, how this was part of a larger, more insidious operation that had claimed many other innocent victims, and how Isabella herself had posed as Amelia to gather evidence and ultimately ensnare them in their own trap. Amelia listened in growing horror and utter amazement. "My own husband tried to murder me for money," she finally whispered, the words heavy with disbelief and the crushing weight of betrayal. "I'm afraid so," Isabella confirmed softly. "But Amelia, there's more. We need to talk about your business." Robert and Victoria were planning to merge your companies with Chin Biotech, but they've been actively sabotaging your operations for months to drive down the value, making it easier to acquire. The betrayal was not just personal. It was a total, relentless assault on every aspect of Amelia's life. That afternoon, Agent Thompson arrived with a team of forensic accountants to brief the sisters on the full, devastating scope of the financial crimes. The news was a complex mix of devastation and a glimmer of encouragement. They've stolen approximately $2 million from your company accounts, Agent Thompson explained, her voice professional but sympathetic. But most of it is recoverable. More importantly, we've discovered that your business was actually performing much better than your financial reports indicated. Robert was deliberately manipulating the numbers to make it appear your companies were failing. Isabella had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed by the FBI filled her with a fresh wave of incandescent rage. So, not only were they trying to murder my sister, she seethed, they were systematically destroying her life's work in the process. It gets worse, Agent Thompson continued, her expression grim. We found irrefutable evidence that Robert had been actively sabotaging business deals, deliberately alienating key clients, and spreading false information about Amelia's health to intentionally damage her professional reputation. He wanted to make sure that even if she miraculously survived, she wouldn't have a business, a career, or a reputation to return to. His aim was total annihilation. Amelia closed her eyes, processing the full, horrifying scope of the betrayal. 8 years of marriage, a shared life, a supposed partnership, and he had been planning this the entire time. Actually, no, Isabella said gently, seeing the anguish etched on her sister's face. From what we can tell, Robert was specifically recruited by Victoria about 2 years ago. She spent months meticulously studying your business and personal life before making her move. You were targeted specifically because of your success, your vulnerability, and your considerable assets. The revelation shifted the burden, emphasizing Amelia as a victim of a calculated plot, not a fool in a bad marriage. Over the following days, as Amelia grew stronger, more resilient, more details of the vast conspiracy emerged. Victoria had been orchestrating similar operations in 4 different states, using a chillingly diverse network of accomplices to identify and target other wealthy, successful individuals. The Chin family, Isabella confirmed, had been quite literally building a pharmaceutical empire on the blood-soaked proceeds of systematic murder, their crimes woven into the very fabric of their legitimate business. But the extensive FBI investigation also revealed something unexpected, a detail that spoke volumes about the perpetrator's hubris. Victoria had been meticulously keeping detailed records of every single operation, including chilling video recordings of some of the murders. Dr. Chin, it seemed, had insisted on this morbid documentation, rationalizing it for research purposes, never for a moment imagining that these very records would eventually be used as irrefutable evidence against them. Why would they keep evidence of their crimes? Amelia asked Isabella, her voice still weak but infused with a bewildered horror. Arrogance, Isabella replied, a bitter taste in her mouth. They never thought they'd be caught. Victoria's father apparently believed he was conducting legitimate research into the effects of various toxins on human subjects. In his twisted mind, he was a scientist, not a murderer. The recordings, Isabella explained, were horrifying to watch, but they provided absolutely irrefutable evidence of their heinous crimes. The FBI had identified at least 23 victims across multiple states, with a combined stolen wealth exceeding $80 million. As news of the arrests spread like wildfire, other victims' families began coming forward, sharing stories of suspicious deaths that had occurred in their own families, finally finding an explanation for their nagging doubts. The true monstrous scope of the Chin family's crimes was still being uncovered, but it was clear that this was one of the most extensive murder-for-profit schemes in American criminal history. Meanwhile, Amelia was making remarkable progress in her physical recovery. The insidious toxin that had nearly claimed her life was finally being eliminated from her system, and she was regaining strength day by agonizing day. But the emotional recovery, Isabella knew, would be a far longer, more complex journey. "I feel so stupid," Amelia confided to Isabella one evening, her voice laced with self-reproach as they watched the sunset paint the hospital room window in hues of gold and rose. "How could I not have seen what Robert was doing? How could I have trusted him so completely?" "Because you're a good person who assumes other people are good too," Isabella replied gently, reaching for her sister's hand. "Victoria and Robert are predators, Amelia. They spent months studying you, learning your weaknesses, and then presenting themselves as exactly what you needed. You couldn't have known because they're professionals at deception. They operate in the shadows of trust, exploiting the very best parts of human nature." "But the signs must have been there," Amelia insisted, a desperate need for answers in her voice. "The way he acted when I got sick, the business decisions he was making." "Amelia, stop," Isabella interrupted, her voice firm but compassionate. "You can't blame yourself for being the victim of a carefully planned, professionally executed murder conspiracy. These people are monsters, and they're incredibly good at what they do. The important thing, the only thing that truly matters, is that we caught them, and you're alive." As Amelia continued to recover, both physically and emotionally, Isabella began the monumental, complex process of untangling the financial damage Robert and Victoria had inflicted upon her sister's business empire. It would take months, perhaps even years, to fully restore everything, to meticulously reweave the torn fabric of Amelia's professional life. But Isabella was fiercely determined to make sure Amelia came back stronger, more formidable, more successful than ever before. The sisters had lost 5 precious years of their relationship due to a business disagreement that now seemed trivial, utterly insignificant, in comparison to the profound trauma they had navigated together. But they had found each other again, their bond forged anew in the crucible of shared adversity, and Isabella was determined never to let anything, no disagreement, no misunderstanding, come between them again. Justice was coming, unequivocally, for Victoria Chin, Robert Foster, and Dr. William Chin. But more importantly, Amelia Foster was alive, she was recovering, and she was ready to reclaim everything that had been stolen from her. The real revenge, the ultimate triumph, was just beginning. 6 months after the dramatic arrests, the trial of Victoria Chin, Robert Foster, and Dr. William Chin erupted into a media sensation. Dubbed the Poison Ring Murders by the voracious press, the case captivated national attention as prosecutors meticulously unveiled the full, horrifying scope of the conspiracy. Isabella sat in the front row of the federal courthouse every single day, a silent, watchful sentinel, observing as the mountain of evidence she had so tirelessly helped gather was presented to the jury. Beside her, Amelia, looking remarkably healthy and strong, her recovery nothing short of miraculous, silently bore witness to the dismantling of her attackers. According to the expert medical and forensic witnesses who testified, the prosecution's case was overwhelming, irrefutable. They presented chilling recordings of Victoria and Robert casually discussing the murders, meticulously detailed financial records illustrating the systematic theft of assets from multiple victims, and most damning of all, Dr. Chin's own personal research files, a horrifying trove of documentation detailing the effects of various custom-designed toxins on human subjects. Victoria's high-powered defense team desperately tried to argue that she was merely following her father's orders, that she was as much a victim of his influence as anyone else. But the overwhelming weight of the evidence proved otherwise. The FBI had discovered that Victoria, far from being a reluctant pawn, had been the cunning architect of the entire operation, brilliantly leveraging her father's twisted pharmaceutical expertise to create untraceable poisons, while she deftly handled the recruitment of accomplices and the selection of vulnerable targets. Robert's defense was even weaker, almost pathetic in its desperation. His lawyer attempted to claim that he had been manipulated by Victoria, that he never truly intended for Amelia to die. But the jury heard damning recordings of Robert in his own voice, celebrating his wife's impending death and callously discussing how he would spend her money. His own words, captured forever, unequivocally condemned him. The most shocking testimony came from Dr. Chin himself, who, in a desperate bid for leniency, agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. He revealed that the monstrous operation had been running for over 2 decades and had claimed at least 30 victims across multiple states. "My daughter was brilliant," Dr. Chin testified, his voice barely audible in the packed courtroom, heavy with a twisted pride and regret, but ruthless. She saw murder as simply another business transaction. She felt no remorse for any of the people she killed. When it came time for Amelia to testify, she was a picture of composed power on the witness stand. She recounted, with quiet dignity and heartbreaking honesty, the months of mysterious illness, the terrifying, gradual realization that someone was actively trying to kill her, and the devastating, soul-crushing betrayal by her husband of 8 years. "I trusted Robert completely," Amelia told the jury, her voice unwavering. "I never imagined that the person who promised to love and protect me was slowly, deliberately poisoning me for money. If it weren't for my sister's courage and intelligence, I would be dead, and they would have gotten away with murder." Her testimony was a powerful, humanizing account of the insidious nature of their crimes. Isabella's testimony was equally compelling, delivering the cold, hard facts with forensic precision. She walked the jury through her meticulous investigation, explaining how she had uncovered the chilling pattern of murders, tirelessly gathered irrefutable evidence, and ultimately, with immense personal risk, posed as her dying sister to ensnare the conspirators in the act. "I knew I was taking a tremendous risk," Isabella said, her gaze sweeping across the jury, "but I couldn't let these monsters kill my sister and escape justice. Someone had to stop them." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. The verdict was swift, decisive, and absolute. Victoria Chin was found guilty on all counts: 15 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, federal financial crimes, and racketeering. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Robert Foster was convicted of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and forgery. He received a sentence of 35 years in federal prison. William Chin, who had cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for a lighter sentence, received 25 years for his pivotal role in creating the poisons and facilitating the murders. As the verdicts were read, Isabella watched Victoria's face for any sign of remorse, any flicker of emotion. There was none. Even facing life in prison, Victoria remained cold, calculating, her mind already moving, planning her appeals with her legal team, her psychopathic lack of empathy utterly unbroken. Robert, by stark contrast, broke down completely when his sentence was announced. He had apparently convinced himself that his superficial cooperation with the investigation would result in leniency, a second chance. But the judge made it abundantly clear that his profound betrayal of his marriage vows made his crimes particularly heinous, unforgivable. "You took an oath to love, honor, and protect your wife," Judge Patricia Morrison said during sentencing, her voice stern and unyielding. "Instead, you actively participated in a conspiracy to murder her for financial gain. Your actions represent the worst kind of betrayal, a moral abomination, and you will spend the next 3 decades in prison reflecting on what you've done." Outside the courthouse, Amelia and Isabella were immediately surrounded by a surging throng of reporters and camera crews, hungry for their story. Amelia, composed and dignified, read a prepared statement. "Justice has been served today," she began, her voice clear and resonant, "not just for me, but for all the victims of this heinous conspiracy. Victoria Chin, Robert Foster, and Dr. William Chin destroyed countless lives in their ruthless pursuit of money and in power. They will spend the rest of their lives in prison, which is exactly what they deserve. I want to sincerely thank my sister, Isabella, whose extraordinary courage and relentless determination not only saved my life, but brought these criminals to justice. I also want to thank the FBI, the prosecutors, and all the law enforcement officials who worked tirelessly to build this case. But most importantly, I want other potential victims to know that predators like these exist and that they absolutely can be stopped. Trust your instincts, ask questions, even the uncomfortable ones, and never let anyone isolate you from the people who truly love you. If something feels wrong, it probably is. As they walked away from the courthouse, Isabella felt a sense of profound completion, a quiet satisfaction she had never experienced before. The monsters who had tried to destroy her sister, her family, were finally behind bars where they would spend the rest of their miserable lives. But the real victory, she knew, wasn't just the prison sentences or the media attention. The real victory was that Amelia was alive, healthy, and ready to rebuild her life, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. "What happens now?" Isabella asked as they settled into the car, leaving the media frenzy behind. Amelia smiled, the first genuine, unburdened smile Isabella had seen from her sister in over a year, a radiant symbol of hope and resilience. "Now," Amelia declared, her voice ringing with newfound purpose, "we get back to business. I have an empire to rebuild, and I'm going to need my sister's help to do it." Justice had been served, yes, but their real, fulfilling work was just beginning. Together, they were going to make sure that Amelia Foster came back stronger than ever, and that no one would ever be able to hurt her again. This was the true, enduring power of sisterhood, of resilience, and of reclaiming one's narrative. 1 year after the seismic trial, Amelia Foster stood confidently in the sleek conference room of her newly renovated headquarters, gazing out at the sprawling city skyline through magnificent floor-to-ceiling windows. The view was, without question, spectacular. But more importantly, it represented everything she had almost lost, everything she had fought with every fiber of her being to reclaim. It was a tangible testament to her survival. Isabella sat at the head of the polished conference table, meticulously reviewing financial reports with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had just performed a modern-day miracle. In a mere 12 months, they had not only recovered every penny Robert and Victoria had stolen, but they had ingeniously grown Amelia's business empire to more than twice its previous formidable size. It wasn't just a recovery, it was a triumphant resurgence. "The numbers are incredible," Isabella announced, looking up from her laptop, a genuine smile on her face. "Revenue is up 150% from before the poisoning. We've strategically acquired 3 new companies, and we've created over 200 new jobs. Your employees didn't just welcome you back, Amelia. They're more loyal, more engaged, and more productive than ever." Amelia smiled as she recalled the day she had returned to work 6 months earlier. She had been understandably nervous, filled with apprehension about facing her employees, worried that they might perceive her as weak, damaged, or a victim. Instead, she found a workforce galvanized by outrage, fiercely furious about what had been done to her and absolutely determined to help her rebuild, to rally around her like a protective shield. "Robert really did a number on morale while I was sick," Amelia reflected, shaking her head. "The employees told me he was autocratic, dismissive, and constantly making baffling decisions that hurt the company. Some of our very best people were planning to quit before my miraculous recovery." Isabella laughed, a rare, genuine sound. "Well, your miraculous recovery turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to the business. Once word got out that you had not only survived an assassination attempt, but had brought down a ruthless murder conspiracy, clients were literally lining up to work with you." It was true. The intense media attention from the trial, which had initially worried Amelia, had ultimately worked powerfully in her favor. She was now seen as a survivor, a fighter, a woman of unyielding strength who couldn't be broken by even the most extreme, insidious circumstances. Business leaders, drawn to such an indomitable spirit, wanted to be associated with that kind of resilience and fortitude. More importantly, Amelia had used her powerful platform to establish the Foster Foundation, a visionary nonprofit organization passionately dedicated to helping victims of domestic violence and financial abuse. The foundation provided crucial legal assistance, expert financial counseling, and much-needed security services to people who were being targeted by predators chillingly similar to Victoria and Robert. It was her way of transforming personal tragedy into a shield for others. "The foundation applications are overwhelming," Isabella reported, her tone reflecting a mixture of pride and the immense scale of the need. "We're currently helping over 500 victims, and more people contact us every single day. Apparently, there are a lot more predators out there than we initially realized." Amelia nodded grimly. The trial had ripped open the curtain on the full scope of the Chin family's crimes, but it had also starkly highlighted how many similar insidious operations were likely running undetected across the country. The foundation was her tangible way of ensuring other victims had the vital resources she had been fortunate enough to access. "Speaking of the foundation," Isabella said, a knowing smile playing on her lips, "Dr. Jonathan Martinez wants to meet with you next week about expanding the medical assistance program." Amelia felt herself blush slightly, a faint color rising to her cheeks. Dr. Jonathan Martinez was the brilliant, compassionate UCLA physician who had overseen her extraordinary recovery from the poisoning. He had been instrumental in saving her life, and over the past 6 months, their professional relationship had gradually, organically blossomed into something far more personal, something deeper. "It's just a business meeting," Amelia insisted, though her telltale smile betrayed her true feelings, the burgeoning warmth she felt for him. "Sure it is," Isabella teased, her eyes sparkling. "That's why you've been to 5 business meetings with him in the past month." Amelia had been understandably cautious about dating again after the profound, soul-shattering betrayal by Robert. But Jonathan was undeniably different. He had seen her at her most vulnerable, at her lowest point, and had dedicated himself to healing her without any expectation of personal gain, without any manipulative undertones. Their relationship was built on a solid foundation of mutual respect, genuine care, and authentic connection, a stark contrast to the manipulation and deception that had characterized her marriage to Robert. "I'm happy for you," Isabella said, her voice turning more serious, more heartfelt. "You deserve someone who truly appreciates what an amazing woman you are." "What about you?" Amelia asked, turning the question back to her sister. "When are you going to start dating again? You've been so focused on helping me that you haven't had time for your own life." Isabella shrugged, a comfortable, unconcerned gesture. "I'm not ready yet. This whole experience has made me realize how important family is. I'd rather focus on rebuilding our relationship and growing the business than worry about romance." Isabella had indeed transformed her own life over the past year. She had closed her highly successful forensic accounting practice and joined Amelia's burgeoning company as chief financial officer and head of security. Her harrowing experience with the Chin conspiracy had made her an unparalleled expert in identifying and preventing corporate fraud, and several other prominent companies had tried, unsuccessfully, to recruit her. But Isabella had no interest in leaving her sister's side. They had lost too many precious years to a stupid business disagreement, and she was fiercely determined to make up for every lost moment. "The security consulting division is taking off faster than we expected," Isabella continued, her gaze back on her tablet. "We've already helped 6 companies identify internal fraud schemes, and law enforcement agencies are increasingly starting to refer cases directly to us." Amelia was immensely proud of what Isabella had accomplished. Her sister had not only saved her life, but had found her true calling, her profound purpose, in the process. Isabella's unique combination of financial expertise and razor-sharp investigative skills made her uniquely qualified to help other companies protect themselves from insidious internal threats. "Any word on the appeals?" Amelia asked, referring to Victoria and Robert's desperate attempts to overturn their convictions. "All denied," Isabella said with a note of deep satisfaction. Victoria's legal team tried to argue that her confessions were obtained under duress, but the judge wasn't buying it. "She'll die in prison, just like she deserves." "And Robert?" Amelia pressed, "still whining about how he was manipulated and deserves a second chance?" "His earliest possible parole date is 28 years from now," Isabella replied. Assuming he serves his full sentence and somehow manages to convince a board he's genuinely remorseful, which seems unlikely. Amelia felt no sympathy for her ex-husband. Robert had made his choices, and now he would live, or rather rot, with the devastating consequences. She had moved on with her life and had no interest, no inclination whatsoever, in looking backward. "There is one more piece of news you might find interesting," Isabella said, pulling up another file on her laptop, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Remember Victoria's previous victims? The families have filed a class action lawsuit against Chin Biotech for wrongful death. The settlement is expected to be over $50 million. "Good," Amelia said firmly, a quiet sense of justice radiating from her. Those families deserve justice and more than just compensation for what was stolen from them. As the sisters wrapped up their weekly business review, Amelia reflected on how profoundly everything had changed in just 2 short years. She had transformed from being a successful but somewhat isolated entrepreneur to being the vibrant, beating heart of a flourishing family business empire that was actively, meaningfully, making a real difference in the world. The poisoning had nearly killed her, yes, but paradoxically, it had also led to the most meaningful, purposeful period of her entire life. She had reconnected with her beloved sister, found genuine, unconditional love with a man who truly cared for her, and discovered a profound purpose that extended far beyond just making money. Victoria and Robert had tried, with every ounce of their twisted being, to destroy her. But they had only succeeded in making her stronger, more resilient, more determined. The best revenge, Amelia had learned, wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, flourishing beyond anything her enemies could have possibly imagined. And she was, truly, just getting started. 2 years after the landmark trial, Amelia stood in the tranquil garden of her new Malibu home, watching the sunset paint the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean in breathtaking shades of gold and fiery pink. The house was smaller, more intimate than her previous Beverly Hills mansion, but it felt infinitely more like home, infused with peace and genuine warmth. She had chosen it specifically because it represented a fresh start, untainted by any memories of Robert or the dark, terrifying period of her life. Jonathan joined her on the terrace, carrying 2 glasses of wine, a comfortable, loving smile gracing his features. A smile that had become so familiar, so reassuring over the past year of their deepening relationship. "Beautiful evening," he said, handing her a glass, his touch gentle. "Perfect evening," Amelia agreed, leaning into his warmth, his presence a comforting anchor. "Thank you for coming to the Foundation dinner with me tonight. I know these events aren't your favorite." Jonathan chuckled softly. "Actually, I'm starting to enjoy them. It's truly amazing to see how many people you're helping. The Foundation has grown into something incredible, Amelia." It was true. The Foster Foundation had expanded far beyond what Amelia had originally envisioned. They now operated in 12 states, providing essential assistance to over 2,000 victims of financial abuse and domestic violence. The foundation offered comprehensive legal aid, vital financial counseling, critical security services, and even temporary housing for people desperately trying to escape dangerous, abusive situations. "Isabella deserves most of the credit," Amelia said, ever humble. "She's the one who figured out how to scale the operations and create sustainable funding models." Isabella had indeed become the unstoppable driving force behind the foundation's remarkable expansion. Her harrowing experience with the Chin conspiracy had given her unique, invaluable insights into how predators operated, and she had developed groundbreaking training programs that helped law enforcement and social workers identify potential victims before it was too late. "Speaking of Isabella," Jonathan said carefully, a hint of something intriguing in his voice, "has she mentioned anything about the job offer from the FBI?" Amelia's smile faded slightly. Agent Thompson had been tirelessly trying to recruit Isabella for months, offering her a prestigious position as a special consultant on white-collar crime cases. It was an incredible opportunity, one that would allow Isabella to work on cases eerily similar to the Chin conspiracy, to dismantle other criminal empires. but it would also mean extensive travel and significant time away from the family business, from Amelia. She's still thinking about it, Amelia said, a touch of wistfulness in her voice. Part of me desperately wants her to take it, because I know she'd be absolutely amazing at it. But selfishly, I don't want her to leave. We just found each other again. Maybe there's a compromise, Jonathan suggested, ever the practical problem solver. Could she consult for the FBI part-time while still running the security division here? That's exactly what I've been hoping for, Amelia confessed. Isabella is brilliant at what she does, but she's also been the anchor that's kept me grounded through all of this. I don't know what I'd do without her. Their conversation was interrupted by the joyous arrival of Isabella herself, who burst through the garden gate, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing an expression of barely contained excitement. "I hope you're ready to celebrate," Isabella announced, holding up the champagne bottle triumphantly. "Because I just got some amazing news." "What happened?" Amelia asked immediately, her curiosity piqued. "Remember the consulting contract I've been negotiating with the FBI?" Isabella explained, her excitement radiating. "They agreed to all my terms. I'll work with them on major cases involving financial fraud and conspiracy, but I'll be based here in Los Angeles, and I'll still run the security division full-time." Amelia felt a wave of immense relief flood through her. "That's perfect. You get to do the investigative work you love without leaving the family business." "It gets better," Isabella continued, her excitement bubbling over. "My first case is a big one. They think there's another operation, eerily similar to the Chin conspiracy, running out of Phoenix. 3 suspicious deaths in the past 2 years, all involving wealthy individuals whose assets were transferred shortly before they died." Jonathan raised his eyebrows. "Sounds like the Chin family's methods are being copied, or perhaps it's a residual network." "That's exactly what we think," Isabella affirmed. "The FBI wants me to lead the investigation because of my specific experience with the original case. If we can crack this one, it might prevent dozens of future murders." Amelia felt a familiar mixture of profound pride and a lingering worry as she watched her sister's infectious enthusiasm. Isabella had undeniably found her true calling in bringing predators to justice, but it also meant she would be constantly, intrinsically, putting herself in harm's way. "Just promise me you'll be careful," Amelia said, her voice soft but earnest. "No more posing as bait to catch murderers." Isabella laughed, a clear, happy sound. "I promise. I've definitely learned my lesson about taking unnecessary risks. This time I'll do the investigation from behind a desk, using financial records and surveillance instead of dangerous undercover work." As they opened the champagne, the cork popping with a celebratory burst, and toasted Isabella's new FBI partnership, Amelia reflected on how perfectly their lives had aligned. She was running a thriving business empire and an impactful foundation. Isabella had found her dream career, a calling that matched her unique talents, and Jonathan had become an integral, cherished part of their extended family. "I have some news too," Amelia said, feeling suddenly nervous, a flutter in her stomach about what she was about to share. "Jonathan and I have been talking about taking our relationship to the next level." Isabella's eyes widened with immediate excitement. "Are you getting engaged?" "Not exactly," Amelia said, laughing at her sister's infectious enthusiasm. "We've decided to move in together. Jonathan is going to sell his condo and move in here." It was a huge, significant step for Amelia, who had been fiercely protective of her independence since Robert's devastating betrayal. But Jonathan had proven himself time and again to be completely different from her ex-husband. He supported her career, respected her autonomy, and never, ever tried to control or manipulate her decisions. "I think that's wonderful," Isabella exclaimed, raising her glass again, "to new beginnings and to the beautiful family we've built together." As they clinked glasses, the crystal chiming softly, and watched the last glorious rays of sunlight disappear into the vast expanse of the ocean, Amelia felt a profound sense of completeness she had never experienced before. She had survived attempted murder, rebuilt her shattered business empire, reconnected with her beloved sister, and found genuine love with a man who truly understood her, who saw and cherished her for who she truly was. Victoria and Robert had tried with every fiber of their being to destroy her life, but they had only succeeded in showing her what was truly, profoundly important: family, genuine love, meaningful work, and the deep, abiding satisfaction of using her success to help others. These were the things that truly mattered. The best revenge, Amelia had learned, wasn't just surviving or even merely thriving. The best revenge was building a life so full of purpose and joy that her enemies' attempts to destroy her seemed pathetic, inconsequential in comparison. And she was living that revenge every single day. 5 years after Victoria Chin's life sentence, Amelia Foster stood confidently at the podium of the Forbes Women's Summit, addressing an awe-inspired audience of 2,000 successful female entrepreneurs. Her keynote speech was being broadcast live to millions more around the world, her message resonating far beyond the conference hall. 5 years ago, Amelia began, her voice strong, clear, and imbued with an undeniable authority, I was dying in a hospital bed, slowly, insidiously, poisoned by the very people I trusted most. Today, my companies employ over 3,000 people. My foundation has helped more than 10,000 victims of financial abuse, and I'm engaged to a man who sees my success as something to celebrate, not something to steal. The audience erupted in a thunderous applause, a wave of admiration and support, but Amelia wasn't finished with her powerful story. The people who tried to murder me thought they were destroying me, she continued, her gaze sweeping across the rapt faces. They thought that by taking my health, my money, and my trust, they would leave me with absolutely nothing. But they were profoundly magimang. They gave me something far more valuable than anything they tried to steal. They gave me clarity about what truly matters in life. In the VIP section, Isabella watched her sister with tears glistening in her eyes, tears of pride, of shared triumph, of enduring love. Beside her sat Jonathan, who would become Amelia's husband in just 3 short months, his hand resting gently on Isabella's arm in shared familial warmth. Next to him was Agent Thompson, who had become a close family friend and a crucial godmother figure to the twins' burgeoning foundation work. Isabella's own life had transformed completely since that terrible, pivotal night in the hospital. Her FBI consulting work had led to the discovery and dismantling of 6 similar insidious murder conspiracies, saving an estimated 40 lives, preventing countless other tragedies. Her security firm now employed 50 highly skilled investigators and had rightfully become the go-to resource for law enforcement agencies dealing with complex, multi-layered financial crimes. But the most satisfying part of Isabella's work was the monthly letters she received from Victoria Chin's maximum security prison. Victoria had been writing to Isabella for 3 relentless years, an unceasing stream of desperate attempts to justify her monstrous actions, claiming she had been misunderstood, manipulated, and eventually, shamelessly begging for forgiveness or assistance with her increasingly futile appeals. Isabella had never responded to a single letter. She understood with chilling clarity that the ultimate revenge against someone like Victoria wasn't anger or hatred, wasn't even the satisfaction of justice served. It was complete, utter indifference. The foundation has grown beyond my wildest dreams, Amelia continued her speech, her voice imbued with heartfelt passion. But our most important achievement isn't just the sheer number of people we've helped or the amount of money we've distributed. Our most important achievement is proving that survivors can not only recover from unimaginable trauma, but can use their experiences to build something profoundly meaningful, something that actively changes the world for the better. As Amelia spoke about the Foundation's vital work, Isabella thought about their latest groundbreaking project, a comprehensive training program for medical professionals designed to empower them to identify potential poisoning cases, to spot the subtle red flags that had almost cost Amelia her life. The program had already been successfully implemented in 200 hospitals across the country and had led to the early detection of 12 attempted murders. Every victim they saved, every predator they caught, every family they helped heal. It was all part of the perfect, enduring revenge against the people who had tried so desperately to destroy them. I want to close with a message for anyone who has ever been betrayed by someone they trusted, Amelia said, her voice growing more passionate, more resonant with hard-won wisdom. Your betrayer's greatest fear is that you will survive and thrive without them. They want you to believe that you are broken, that you need them, that you can't succeed on your own. The greatest revenge you can possibly take is proving them utterly, unequivocally wrong. Gyo. The standing ovation lasted for a glorious 5 minutes, a powerful testament to her message, to her indomitable spirit. As Amelia left the stage, she was surrounded by a throng of women eager to share their own stories of survival and success, each conversation a poignant reminder of why this work was so incredibly important. Later that evening, at the summit's elegant gala dinner, Amelia and Isabella sat at the head table alongside some of the most powerful and influential women in business. The conversation was lively, inspiring, filled with the energy of shared ambition and camaraderie. But Isabella noticed that Amelia kept discreetly checking her phone. "Everything okay?" Isabella asked quietly, a sister's knowing glance. "Agent Thompson just texted me," Amelia replied, a satisfied, almost mischievous smile playing on her lips. "Robert's parole hearing was denied again. The board said he still shows no genuine remorse for his crimes." "Good," Isabella said simply, her tone devoid of emotion. "He made his choice, and now he gets to live with the consequences." Robert had been tirelessly attempting to get early parole for 2 years, claiming that he was a changed man, that he had found religion and desperately wanted to make amends. But his letters to various parole boards, full of self-pity, consistently showed that he still blamed Victoria for manipulating him and vehemently insisted that he had never intended for Amelia to die. The parole board, clearly seeing through his shallow performance, had consistently denied his appeals. Robert would serve his full 35-year sentence, just as he deserved. "You know what the best part is?" Amelia said, looking around the opulent room full of successful, powerful women, a profound sense of gratitude and triumph in her eyes. 5 years ago, Robert thought he was going to inherit everything I had worked for. Instead, I've built something 10 times larger than what he tried to steal, and he gets to read about my success from his prison cell." It was undeniably true. Amelia's business empire now included 7 thriving companies spanning technology, real estate, and consulting. Her personal net worth had soared from $5 million to over $50 million. The Foster Foundation had become one of the most respected and impactful nonprofits in the country, a beacon of hope. Most importantly, she had built a life overflowing with genuine relationships, profound purpose, and meaningful work. Her engagement to Jonathan was based on mutual respect, unwavering support, and deep, unconditional love, a stark contrast to the manipulation and deception that had characterized her marriage to Robert. Her relationship with Isabella was stronger, more intertwined than it had ever been, built on shared trauma, mutual support, and an unbreakable bond of sisterhood. "I have an idea for our next foundation project," Isabella said, pulling out her tablet, her mind always whirring with new initiatives. "What if we created a scholarship program for victims of financial abuse who want to go back to school? So many of the people we help have had their education interrupted, their careers derailed by abusive relationships." Amelia's face lit up with immediate excitement. "That's brilliant, Isabella. We could partner with universities to create accelerated programs for adult learners, give people the tangible tools they need to rebuild their careers and become financially independent. It would be life-changing." As the sisters began planning their newest, most ambitious initiative, Amelia reflected on how much her definition of success had profoundly changed. 5 years ago, she had measured success by revenue, by profit margins, by market share. Now she measured it by lives saved, by families reunited, by predators stopped in their tracks. Victoria Chin was serving life without parole in a maximum security prison, her pharmaceutical empire dismantled and sold to pay restitution to the families of her victims. Robert Foster was languishing in federal prison, forgotten by everyone except the parole board that steadfastly kept denying his release. Dr. William Chin had died in prison 2 years earlier, his legacy permanently tainted by his central role in multiple murders. Meanwhile, Amelia Foster had become one of the most admired businesswomen in the country, a best-selling author, and a powerful voice for survivors everywhere. Isabella Brooks was internationally recognized as an expert in financial crime investigation and had been featured in major media outlets as the woman who had single-handedly brought down one of the largest murder conspiracies in American history. The perfect revenge wasn't just that they had survived, it was that they had used their trauma, their pain, to build something beautiful, something meaningful, something that would far outlast their attackers by decades. As the gala wound down and the sisters prepared to return home, Amelia received one final text message that made her smile, a quiet, knowing smile. "What is it now?" Isabella asked, noticing her sister's expression. "It's from the warden at Victoria's prison," Amelia said, showing Isabella the message. "Apparently, Victoria heard about my keynote speech today and had what they're calling an emotional breakdown. She's been placed on suicide watch." Isabella felt no sympathy, no flicker of pity. She's finally realizing that while she's rotting in a cell, you're living your best life and inspiring millions of people. That must be unbearable for someone like her. "The warden wanted to know if I wanted to make a statement or visit her," Amelia continued, her voice calm and resolute. "I told him no. Victoria Chin is no longer relevant to my life." And that was the absolute truth. Victoria, Robert, and Dr. Chin had become mere footnotes in Amelia's epic story, cautionary tales about the devastating consequences of unchecked greed and profound betrayal. But they were no longer the main characters in her narrative. The main characters were Amelia and Isabella, two extraordinary sisters who had fiercely refused to be victims, who had courageously turned their pain into profound purpose, and who had built an empire dedicated to protecting others from the very kind of predators who had once tried to destroy them. As they drove home through the vibrant Los Angeles night, Amelia thought about all the people who would benefit from their tireless work in the years to come. Thousands of potential victims who would be protected because of the groundbreaking training programs they had developed. Hundreds of survivors who would meticulously rebuild their lives with help from the foundation. Dozens of criminals who would be caught, stopped in their tracks before they could claim more innocent victims. Victoria Chin had tried to murder her for money. Instead, she had inadvertently created a powerful force for justice that would prevent countless other murders and help thousands of survivors reclaim their lives. Robert Foster had tried to steal her life's work. Instead, he had unwittingly inspired her to build something far greater than anything he could have ever imagined. Dr. William Chin had tried to reduce her to a mere research subject in his twisted, dehumanizing experiments. Instead, she had emerged as a powerful voice for victims' rights and an undeniable leader in the relentless fight against financial abuse. The perfect revenge wasn't violence or cruelty. It was success, so complete, so meaningful, so profound, that it rendered their enemies' actions not just criminal, but pathetically pointless. Amelia Foster had not just survived attempted murder, she had thrived beyond her attackers' worst nightmares, built a legacy that would help people for generations, and found love and family that could never be stolen or destroyed. As she looked at the sparkling engagement ring on her finger and thought about the foundation board meeting tomorrow, the exciting FBI case Isabella was working on, and the transformative scholarship program they were planning, Amelia realized that the scared, isolated woman lying in that hospital bed 5 years ago could never, in her wildest dreams, have imagined how wonderful life could become. Victoria Chin, Robert Foster, and Dr. William Chin had tried to write the tragic ending to her story. Instead, they had only provided the motivation, the catalyst, for her to write a much, much better one herself.